I'm sure that everyone has their own opinions on what the best sport games may be. Like for some, it could be story-based games for the single-player adventure, or for others, it could be games like NHL, Madden, or NBA for the multiplayer competitiveness. Or maybe for Nintendo fans, it's most likely the sport games for the charm or unique twist thrown into whatever these iconic characters are playing. However, for me being a Nintendo fan myself, or a Wii veteran, it's gotta be this. I have been playing Wii Sports for over a decade, and I still enjoy it today. For those who don't know, Wii Sports is a compilation sports game marketed to show off the Wii's motion control gimmick, which has made it unique from other sport games coming out at the time. There were these real sport accessories that were made for this game because Nintendo wanted consumers to mimic a real sport naturally through a video game. The sports here include tennis, baseball, bowling, golf, and boxing, along with some training games for each sport and a fitness test each person can do once a day. So before I dive into today's topic, I want to give a backstory on how my attachment for this tech demo started. Back in December of 2009, I got my original Nintendo Wii for Christmas with Wii Sports packed in. I knew of the Wii's existence a little before that Christmas as the console was introduced to me at my cousin's house around 2008 or early 2009. I remember playing a few games they owned at the time like Mario Kart and Madagascar Racing, but they also had Wii Sports as it came with their Wii as well. This was because the newer Wii models weren't out yet, so back then they had the original model that was sold to have Wii Sports packed in. Although I don't remember playing Wii Sports back at their house, I do genuinely remember discovering it at my house on my original Wii in Christmas of 2009 when I saw my dad and uncle try out one of the sports hours after we opened all of our gifts. Despite receiving it packed into my Wii that Christmas, it wasn't the first time I played the game. Actually, that was around 2010, where most weekends me, my dad, and brother would play all the sports and have a ton of fun bonding together before my swimming lessons. Back then, I didn't regularly play video games, so I wasn't great at Wii Sports, but I still had fun trying to play the game casually to beat my brother and dad while learning the rules of each sport. This game also introduced me to some sports that I never knew existed in real life, like tennis and golf. A few years later, we kind of fell off playing it as we unfortunately lost the disc on top of discovering our original Wii broken. Luckily, a few months after we got the Wii U, my dad bought another copy at EB Games that was used and came in a white blank case. I ended up throwing out the white case and now use my cousin's old Wii Sports sleeve, which they gave me last year, to store my disc. After my dad bought the new copy, we did start playing it for a bit, but eventually fell off it again for another few years as I got more interested in other titles. But in 2018, when I was a teenager, my dad and I got back into it again, and since then we pop it into my current Wii a couple times a month or sometimes weeks and have fun playing it together. Also, we not only try to beat each other, but mostly gain our best scores for each sport. Although I mostly play to bond with my dad, I still consider Wii Sports in my top favorite Wii games personally for always providing replayability. I always want to get better at the sports by getting high scores, medals, or even improving my skill level, which can eventually lead to receiving a pro status for each sport. However, each sport or training game has its own difficulty level, so now I will go over and show my progress for everything. The regular game has 3 game options: singles, the best of 3, and the best of 5. However, despite any option you'll pick, I find playing against the CPUs by myself pretty easy. When I play against them, I could boost my skill level fairly high, which is mostly because of how slow they hit the ball. Though the CPUs do get a little harder the higher your skill level is, but even then, I didn't have anything to sweat over. When playing against my dad, there's generally a 50-50 chance at winning, since we both have similar skill levels and aren't slow like the CPUs. However, compared to regular tennis, the training games are actually harder. The first one on top is hitting the ball inbounds, but what makes it annoying is if you even hit one ball outside of the court, it's game over. I personally prefer playing this training game during the fitness test, as they give you a timer to get as many balls in the court as possible without giving you a game over when getting out of bounds. That makes it a lot more fun to play. The second game here is trying to get the ball into this faded net, training your swings in all sorts of directions due to the net moving horizontally. I haven't played this one as much as the first game, but I still find it as difficult because again, you get a game over when hitting the ball out of bounds. But in the first 2 training games, I got okay scores, nothing record breaking. The target training game, on the other hand, is the most brutal out of them all. Genuinely, I get around 2 targets before I get a game over because your ball goes quickly to the side, making it difficult to swing it back inbounds. bounce to get enough momentum to hit another target. I sometimes end up breaking the bricks around the target instead. Even with the timer, I probably wouldn't get many more targets broken because of how difficult it is to handle the ball, but I really don't have much interest in aiming for a better score since it's kind of unfairly hard. This is another game where I play with my dad sometimes, and we both have a similar skill level. The reason why my skill level isn't super high is because for some reason any skill level for tennis and baseball only go up in the single player games against CPUs, not in multiplayer. Usually though, baseball has been a hit or miss kind of sport for me, meaning sometimes I win or other times I lose. The hard part for me is hitting the ball with good timing, as I have hit it a little early or a little late without meaning to. Even at times, I randomly get fouls without meaning to. Though, when I am really focused, I usually don't miss many hits, resulting in a good game. Like in a recent game, I have beaten the CPUs 25-1 due to having constantly gaining home runs and doubles caused by good timed hits. I honestly have never gotten this high of a score before, and it will be hard to top it. I honestly should have gotten a mercy rule where the game automatically ends when you are winning by a lot of points against your opponent. But for some reason, the game just kept going when I gained so many points to my surprise. My pitching is also decent, but I don't know the most effective method to get someone out constantly, so I just play around with the button combinations to see what happens. Hopefully I can learn more methods one day. Overall, baseball's pretty good, though I wish there was an option in choosing between 1 to 8 innings, so we can choose how long we want our game to be. Honestly, some people may not mind 3 innings, but choosing how many innings we want would have been nice. The training games for baseball are better than tennis, although there isn't that trains your pitching for some reason. Like, why couldn't they have added at least one that trains you to pitch properly? Anyway, these training games help you bat, which out of the 3 games here, home runs and batting practice are good, while swing control is pretty difficult. Home runs, I managed to get a perfect game, meaning all 10 homers. Getting 10 of those wasn't super easy, but I managed as long as I hit the ball hard enough with good timing. Batting practice is where they count how many balls to hit at a time. I got a good score here, but I still want to hit all 30 balls one day. Mainly for this one, it gets a little tricky near the end, but again with good timing, it's nothing to sweat over. Swing control is where you hit the ball in the blue or white shades. I always find this one the most difficult baseball training game because I personally feel like I can barely control my direction and swinging. Hitting the front isn't too bad with good timing, but the sides are brutal. It honestly feels like luck to get any points hitting on the sides, as I don't know how to properly do side swings. For swing control, my record's decent, but I honestly don't have too much interest in going back to it unless I watch a video on an effective strategy to hit the sides properly. This has to be my personal favorite sport out of the whole collection, and another one that my dad and I play every time we turn on the game. What I like the most about bowling is how fairly easy it is to get a good game. Not only do I have a pro status with the shiny ball, but my skill level is way over 1000. My dad's decent at bowling too, but not as good as me. I usually try to aim for a perfect game every time I play, but since I've gotten a couple in the last few years, it doesn't really bother me if I have an off game, especially considering how high my skill level is. Me being right-handed, my method for getting a perfect game is lining the ball to the right around the specific area, then you smoothly release the ball around the center of the pins with a bit of momentum and spin. Most times this works, but that might be just for me, as everyone's method of getting strikes are a bit different. Like my dad's method of getting a strike is lining the ball not as far to the right as I do. Also, I have some good scores in the bowling training games. For spin control in picking up spares, the goal is to line yourself up correctly and roll the ball through different types of angles to knock all the pins down. For these 2 training games, it can get difficult in the later lanes, but my scores are pretty good as these games allow me to retry a lane a few times when I miss. Power throws has to be the training game I play the most. The goal is getting strikes, but the amount of pins progresses with each turn. Personally, I always strive to get a perfect game here, as I can get a couple strikes in the beginning and even knock most pins down near the end. The regular method is to line your ball up somewhere horizontally to make the ball spin into the pins, trying to knock them all down. Though this generally works best with the first few pins, but in later turns, I do this method. Usually this works most times, but even then there's still a chance where I can get most down, but not all. Overall though, I actually did manage to get a platinum medal here with a score in the 700s, which is a couple of pins off from a perfect game. This is one of my personal favorites out of all the training games due to the fun challenge and creativity of getting all strikes successfully. Like bowling, golf is another sport my dad and I play a lot. Most times when turning the game on, we select golf as our first sport to play as we both love the challenge the game provides. Here we both have pro statuses, so it's generally another 50-50 chance at who will win between him and I. My personal best is -8 and 9 holes, but every time my score is always different. My dad also tries to get a good score too and gets a little more frustrated than me when he makes small mistakes. Overall though, our skill levels aren't too different from each other. Regular golf has 3-hole games, which are beginner, intermediate, and expert, while a 9-hole game contains all of the holes from each difficulty into one game. I don't have much progress for 3 holes, as I honestly don't really play much of it. My dad and I just mostly play 9-hole games because it's longer, giving us the opportunity to get a greater score. Each hole is different in terms of the course layout and number of strokes. Also, the wind is different for each hole every time, throwing in something we have to consider when making a shot, especially from a far distance. Another thing you also have to consider is if you get out of bounds, you lose 2 strokes. Plus, your shot may be affected if you land in the rough or bunker, and avoiding these places are easier said than done if you want to get under par. Now, I will briefly summarize my experiences on each hole. Hole 1's a par 4 course and it's generally the easiest because it's straight. I usually get birdies here, although every time I always strive to get an eagle. Hole 2's a short par 3 course, so I usually try to get a hole in 1 here, although I only got it once years ago. In general though, I usually get a birdie or a par. The only thing you have to be careful about is avoiding the bunker on your first stroke. Hole 3's a par 5 course, and I like this one because of the different directions you can hit your ball to. You can take the long route and play it safe, or take the faster route and hit the ball onto an island without accidentally getting out of bounds. From this island, you can get onto the green within a second stroke if you hit your ball correctly. Generally for this course, I usually get eagles or birdies. Hole 4 is another par 3, and I usually try to get a hole in 1 here, but it never happens, so I just get a birdie or a par. Hole 5 is another par 5 course, and I also like this one too because there are 2 directions to make it to the green fairly quickly. I usually get birdies here, sometimes eagles. Hole 6 is another par 4 course. It's not difficult or anything, but the thing you have to consider is going over the bunker when hitting the ball from across the river and also landing in the rough on your first stroke. But if you can avoid these 2 obstacles, you're good. I usually get a birdie or a par here. Hole 7's another par 4 course, and I mostly get pars here. There are 2 directions, and it's very risky to get stuck in the bush or land in front of a tree. A few times I've gotten birdies here, but I usually get pars. Hole 8's another par 3 course, and due to the narrow twisty path, it can be hard to get the ball onto the green. So here I mostly get a par, though when I do land onto the green in my first stroke, I do try to get a birdie by hitting gently with a wedge. Lastly, hole 9's a par 5 course, and here I have to make it onto the furthest island to get it into the putter. It usually takes me 2 or 3 strokes to get onto the green. It honestly depends how well I'm playing or if I accidentally land into the water. Usually I finish with a birdie or a par though. Not only is the main game fun, but the training games are also great too. One tests your putting, and with a lot of tries, I got a perfect game. This one's not too difficult until near the end when you have to line up your putter properly over the bumpy grass. Though it's still fun as you can try again a few times when you miss, just like some of the bowling training games. Another one is called hitting the green, which trains you to hit your ball in from a far distance. Generally, I only got 1 in occasionally, so I just focus on hitting it close to the putter, which got me a score under 100 feet. Getting under 100 feet is not easy, so if you want to do good, then be careful with your shots and avoid landing out of the green, which automatically gains you an additional 100 feet as a penalty. The last training game is one of my personal favorites, targets. Here you try to hit the 100 target 10 times with a driver to earn a perfect game, but the difficulty comes in with each turn getting wind. So if you want a good score, be careful with how hard you hit your ball. My dad and I usually play this at least once every time we play the Wii because of the fun challenge. We both always aim to get a perfect game, with the wind being our obstacle of course. Though I currently have around 775, which is very good, I still want to improve my score to at least 800 or even one day a perfect game of 1000. Out of all of the sports, boxing is the one I have played the least. Despite playing it a few times in the past, I have never played boxing much because of the controls. The motion controls work well with other sports, but with boxing, it's very tiring to constantly shake. Plus, the controllers barely respond when playing. Like, couldn't they have controlled anything else with the buttons here? For the training games, I don't see myself playing them because the controls are literally the same as playing regular matches. Punching the bag is excessive shaking, which makes my arm sore, while dodging barely works as I feel the nunchuck half responds to the moveset. Though I will say punching targets was the easiest out of them all because it responds with just one remote shake that's pretty accurate. In general though, the remote and nunchuck for boxing barely work or sometimes respond, making it tiring to even complete one match. My dad also hasn't played boxing for over a decade too, due to him knowing how bad the physics are. The last thing I want to talk about is the fitness test that each person or me can do. My dad and I haven't done it much, but you generally play 3 random training games to test your stamina, speed, and balance. Once the test is done, they will give you a fitness age. The younger the better. Personally, when I took these tests a few times, my fitness age was pretty decent as I don't remember getting anything terrible despite some mistakes made. Getting a good fitness age in general is all about getting familiar with how each training game works, motivating you to practice all of them to improve. The only thing I don't like is that each me is only allowed to take a test once a day. What if I wasn't happy with my fitness age and was forced to wait until the next day to improve it? I personally don't really do this often, so it doesn't actually bother me, but I could understand how it would bother someone else who wanted to improve their fitness age multiple times a day. Well, Wii Sports has not only become one of Nintendo's best-selling titles, but also a classic title in my eyes because of how fun these sports are, as there's always a goal when playing them. The goal isn't just beating my opponent, but also trying to gain something, motivating me to get better at every sport. I know there are some flaws with the game, primarily the controls for boxing, but that doesn't make up all of the other great things this tech demo has to offer. That's why it's still not only one of my most replayable Wii games to date, but also a classic sports game that I will play forever, on my own and with other people. For those who are new to my channel, my name's Player E. Collins, and thank you so much for watching this video. Comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos coming out in the future, and I will keep you guys posted on when the next video will be.